Hey, what's up guys, back again with another video in the JavaScript series. This time I'm going to teach you about the DOM selectors.
Hey, run it up faster, run it up faster, nigga. Hey, run it up faster, run it, hey, run it up faster, run it up faster, run it up faster, yeah, nigga fly like a ladder,
Alright guys, so now that we have a good understanding of what, the basics of the DOM, the document object model and all that fun stuff, we can actually begin to work with selecting elements on the page like we did last time, but in a more advanced way, you could say. So before we selected, let's say we want to select this, this h1 tag right here, right? We could do that by doing document.body.childNodes, and then we could check and see which one that is. It should be this one, so let's try h1. So child nodes, that would be the second one, so 1. So now we have selected that h1 element, and then we could do stuff with that element once we select it, okay? But that's going to be for next episode, okay? So this episode we're going to work on selecting these elements, and the next episode we're going to work on actually using the selected elements, to change the values of their styling and manipulate them, okay? So anyway, if we look at the code here for our web page, we can see that we have a bunch of basic elements here. Some of them have classes, some of them have titles. We have an anchor tag, headers, and lists and stuff like that. And so the first way we can select an element is actually by its ID, okay? So if we provide an ID to a certain method, we can actually get a variable representation of that element, right? We can select it, okay, for future use, So we can do it down here as a script, of course, JavaScript script, or we could do it in the console, which might be easier. I'm going to do it in the console, but if you want to look in the description, I'll leave the code for today's episode, and you could check it out and look at it if you need to. So anyway, the first method that you can use to select, a DOM element is actually, like I said, the ID selector. So we can do it like this. So document.getElementById, and then you could pass in a parameter, and the parameter is going to be the ID of a certain element, okay? And if we go back here to our code, we can see that this ID right here is title. So let's go ahead and select that one. So we just pass in title as a string here, then close it off, and then now we should have we have selected this document here, or this element, I mean, not document. And so if we click enter, we can actually see that it prints out it returns the actual value of that element. So yeah, so if you want to store it as a variable, we can do that, okay, for future use. So var title element is equal to document.getElementById title, okay? And so now we have stored the selected element inside of this variable here for future reference. So basically, if we want to be able to change, some styling of the element later on, we could do that, okay? We don't have to do it all in one go. So anyway, just an example of what we can do once we select it. Like I said, we'll be going over it next episode, but just an example is we can change the styling of it. So title element dot style, and then we could change a bunch of the styles. So if you want to change the color, we could do that. So you set it to red. And there we go, so now it's red, okay? So that's just an example of something we could do. And so yeah, so now we have selected a element and then stored it in a variable, okay, by using the getElementById method, okay? So let's go ahead and write this down here in our script down here, so we can just keep track. It might be easier for you. So var title element is equal to document.getElementById title, okay? And so this is going to be to get an ID. Like I said, I'll leave this in the description also, so you can check it out. It's going to be more detailed than this. But yeah, so if you want to print out, a more detailed view of it, of course, we could do console.dir, and then a title element, so we can see it better. So now we have a object representation of the title element that we just selected, and we can see a bunch of information on it. Okay, so that's how we do that. So anyway, the next step is going to be to get elements by their class name, okay? So if we go back here, we can see that these two h2 tags have a class name of list title, okay? And so this next method here is going to allow us to get those elements by its class name, okay? So we can store it in a variable again. We'll call it list elements because it's for the list. It's a header for the list that we have here, these two right here. So var list elements is equal to document.getElementsByClassName, okay, if you look at it here. But as you can see here, if you look closely, you can see that it says get elements, plural, okay? So that means that we're going to be selecting multiple elements. So we're going to get a special type of thing back. It's going to return something special once we put that in here. So I'll show you in a second. So list title is going to be our class name, of course. Let's press enter. Now let's print out the value of what we just stored, I guess. So list elements, and we get something special here. It's called an HTML collection, okay? And it's not exactly an array, but it's basically an array. It's a special type of array, you could say, that you could use to store, you know, elements, right? So basically, again, a recap of what this method does. It gets all of the elements by a certain class name and then puts them in this HTML collection kind of thing, okay? And so if you want to get the value of one of these elements, let's say you want to get the first one here, we could simply do, well, let's print it out, I guess. So console.log list elements, and then we could put 0 because it's 0 based. Of course, it has the index right next to it also if you want to see that. And you could open this up. But anyway, so if you want to select that single one, we could do that, print it out, and now we print out the value of that single element, okay? And of course, we could dir it, you know, to see the full object view of it, and we can get all that information here, okay? So yeah, that's how you select different classes, right? But just remember that it's not just for one, it actually returns a list of the classes, okay? So it's going to give you multiple elements, it's going to give you multiple elements. So that's how you do that. So the next one is actually going to be called, actually, let's put it down here first, so we can just keep track. So var list elements is equal to document.get elements by class name, and then list title, because these two have the class name of list title, right? And that's going to store both of those elements inside of a special kind of array. Gets multiple elements and returns in a HTML collection. Okay, so that's going to do that. And so the next one is going to be called get elements by tag name. Okay, so that's very similar to the class one. Okay, so if we do var li tags, because what I want to do is grab we have some li tag. Let me show you. So we have some li tags here. So let's say we want to grab all these, right? We could do that by the special method document.get elements by tag name, okay? And so as you notice here, it's also elements plural, so that means it's going to grab multiple elements and store them in an HTML collection. And so what it's going to do is look in your basically your document object model. It's going to look for any elements by a given tag name. So for example, the tag name that we want to search for is li, right? That's the name of the element, I guess, the tag for the element, okay? So if we press enter, we're not going to store all of those inside of here. So if we want to print that out, we do console.log li tags, just like that. And then now we get a special HTML collection here, of course. So we can see that we get all 6 of the LIs that we have on our webpage here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it was able to select all of them and then throw them into this HTML collection, okay? So of course we can select any of these by hovering over them. Well, not selecting it, but we can see which ones they're corresponding to by hovering over them. And then let's say we want to select, you know, the 5th one, for example, or the 6th one. Actually, it's just number 5 on the index. So if we want to select that one and store it in the variable, we could do var li tag is equal to document.get elements by tag name, and then we could do li, and then we could do 5. Okay, so it's going to get the 5th element from here, basically. Okay, it's going to store it in that variable. So if we want to console log now li tag, we can do that, and it's going to give us this one here, milk. Okay, so that's just an example of how you select elements by their tag name. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back here and write this down, or type it down. So var li tags is equal to document.get elements by tag name, and then li. Okay, and this is going to get search your document model for any elements with that tag name. Okay, so that's what that's going to do, and there we go. So these are the 3 main element selectors that you can use, the 3 basic ones, okay? But now we move on to the next type, the next 2 types, okay, which are going to be query selectors, okay? And query selectors are really cool. They're really actually awesome because it can do pretty much anything, okay? So let's write it out. So query tag, we'll call it query tag because we're using query selector, is equal to document.query selector, okay? And so what you pass in for a query selector is going to be a CSS selector, okay? So I'm assuming you know a little bit about CSS, of course, if you're watching this series. But basically, if you want to select something, oops, wrong thing. Basically, if you want to search something in CSS, or select something in CSS, I mean, you can reference a ID by putting a dot in front, or not, it's a class, but if you want to reference an ID, you put a hashtag in front, or a hash, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so basically in CSS, there's different ways for you to select different I guess, elements also, like you would do with the DOM. So what this will do, this special method here, will use these CSS selectors to actually select the DOM, okay? So for example, we want to select, let's see, let's select this header here, okay? So if we go back to our code here, we can see that it has a class name of list title, of course. Okay, so let's go ahead and select that with the CSS selector. So whenever you're selecting a class in CSS, you would use a dot in front. So dot list title, I think that's what it's called, and then press enter. And then now let's print that out to see what we got. So log query tag, and then boom, we get this thing right here, right? So why did it print out only one element even though we selected, a class that has multiple, right? There's 2 of these classes, right? Why did it only select the first one, right? Well, the thing is, whenever you're using the query selector, it's going to find it's only going to return or select the first match that it finds, okay? So for example, if we have like 1,000, list title classes, right, or on elements, it's only going to select the first one that it finds, okay? It's going to store that as that selected element, okay? So that's how that works. So let's go ahead and type this out. So query selector for selecting one element from a CSS selector, okay? And then var query tag is equal to document dot get element, or actually query selector down there, and then we could say hashtag title if we want to select the ID of this element here, right? Also, if you don't want to do a title or a class, you could also select the element itself, right? Because if you remember, if you want to select let's select a p tag, right? We could simply do p just like that and then CSS, right? So we could also do that in here, of course. So if we want to select the first anchor tag that it finds, we could simply put an A in here, right? They could also select elements by their name, right? By their tag. So that's just an example of the things that I can do. So let's just put hashtag title here. So yeah, it's going to select that this h1 element here, okay? Because it has a ID of title. Anyway, so that's how that works. So maybe you don't want to select only one with the query selector, right? You want to select multiple elements, as many as you can find. You can actually do that, okay? So if we do var, we could call it query tags, because it's plural now, is equal to document dot query selector all, okay? So that's going to select all of the elements that it finds with that given selector, right? So if we want to select all of these li tags here, right, we could simply put li as the selector, right? So now it's going to give us all of those. So let's print that out to see what we got. So query tags, just like that, and we get a no list of all of the LIs, right? So that's pretty cool. And so that's how you select that. So let's just do another example. If we want to select both of these h2 tags here, we could do dot list title, okay? So now it's not going to only select the first one, it's going to select both of them, okay? So we print that out, we can see that it does that, okay? And also something I want you to notice is that whenever you're using the document.get elements by class name and then document.get elements by tag name, it's going to return an HTML collection. But whenever you're using the query tag, or the query selector, it's going to return a node list, okay? That's just an interesting thing, but they pretty much both work the same way in terms of selecting the elements. So anyway, that's actually it, but let's first type this out. So query selector that takes all of the elements found with that selector. So that's how that works. So var query tags is equal to, I can't type, document.querySelector all, and then dot list title, okay? So that's just an example of these 5 selectors that you can use inside of your JavaScript code to actually work with the document object model and select elements. But next episode we're going to work with using these selected elements to actually change the value of these elements and do some really cool stuff, with DOM manipulation, okay? So anyway, if you have any questions about what we did, about the selectors or anything like that, you could ask a question in the comment section. Or if you look in the description, you can find the Discord link for our Discord server, and then join that, hang out with us, anything you want to do. And yeah, so finally we also have the code from today's episode, like I said, in the description also. So make sure you check that out, bookmark it for future reference and all that fun stuff. So yeah, if you like this video, leave a like. If you want to see more, subscribe, and peace.